Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 homeschool myths. So if you enjoy this type of content and other homeschool and lifestyle content, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. All right, so today I wanted to go over these 5 myths that some people might have, and they might be looking at it from an outside perspective. It might be people that already homeschool that might still have some of these myths in their head. And some of them might be kind of hard to get over, and they might be something that's a continual work in progress, like something that you're always striving for and to understand. But these are just a few myths. Obviously there's lots. I just picked a few that kind of stood out to me that I wanted to address or had something to talk about or to say about them. So that's what we're going to share today. Okay, I have my notes. So if I'm looking at them or putting them up, it's because I can't always remember everything that I wanted to say. So I might reference them occasionally. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is socialization, which I think a lot of people can guess because that's always something that comes up all the time. I think we get sick of hearing it as homeschoolers. Everybody, that is a question they always have, like socialization. What about your kids? How they're gonna be messed up socially? And maybe they will, maybe they won't. A lot of public school kids are messed up socially too, and a lot aren't. So, like flip a coin and we'll see who ends up messed up. But I think a lot of times when we think of socialization, if I can say the word, we think of playing with friends, okay? And that's a part of it, but I feel like that's such a small part of socialization, and that's the part people are always concerned about. They're concerned about, will their kids have friends? Will they be able to hang out with other people their age? And I just think that's kind of silly, to be honest, because yes, having friends is important. Being able to play and just enjoy is good, and to have people you can rely on and talk to as you get older is a good thing. But the socialization part, I think, is silly that we think they're gonna actually learn that from friends. Let me tell you what the dictionary says. There's a couple definitions in the dictionary for socialization, but it says it's a process of learning to behave in a way that is acceptable to society. And I just like to focus on the process of learning to behave, because I feel like that is a huge part of socialization. And when I think of my kids just having friends and me just being so concerned about their friends, I don't want them to learn how to behave from a lot of their friends or from a lot of the kids their age that aren't maybe their friends, but just the kids their age that they would be interacting with in a public school classroom. I'm like, I don't think I want them to act that way. Behaviors of how they would interact with people in public, or like maybe they're in a restaurant, how they would act in a restaurant, all these different behaviors that they would have. Even just learning things at home of chores and hard work teaches them how they're going to behave when they get a job as they get older. These are all parts of socialization and not ones that most people think about. Again, it's always just, my kids need to play with other kids or they won't be able to communicate with people. They'll be messed up. And they don't really understand all the parts behind being socialized correctly. And so in my head, I think I want my kids to learn to interact in good ways with other kids their age, with kids that are older than them, and with adults, and a variety of adults, right? I want them to be able to carry on a conversation with them and feel comfortable doing that. And then there's also the part of them just being able to speak in public and be able to talk to people if they have questions and concerns or needs. And honestly, a lot of kids that I know are very scared to do that. They don't, even if you try to talk to them, they won't talk to you. I've had several kids ignore me actually when I'm trying to have a conversation with them. I'm like, oh, okay. Whereas I'm not trying to toot our horn or anything about our kids. It's mostly my husband that does this because he is the one that's really good at creating good environments of interacting with other human beings. He's very, very good at doing that. And he teaches them, okay, well, ask this question. Can you go ask them? Did you ask them their name? Did you ask them what they like to do? And even in church, going up to some of the older women in the ward and asking them how their week was. Sometimes they have very little interaction with other people. And so having a younger person come up and ask them, and my girls have created such a good friendship with some of the older women in our congregation because they are willing to go up and just talk to him every single week. Things like that are part of socialization. And again, learning how to function well, like in an environment where you have work to do and jobs to do and chores to do and things like that, where you will have a boss and someone that you need to be respectful of. And so learning to respect adult or just authority figures in general is important. And so just all these things are part of socialization. And I think when people ask that question, they're only thinking about who is my kid going to be able to play with, and not considering all the other aspects. And all those other aspects are taught by parents. They're taught by adults. And if they're not taught by parents or adults, they're taught by children that don't know how to do them correctly. And so honestly, I don't want kids teaching my kids to do those things. And so that's my kind of spiel about socialization. I feel like every time it comes up, you know, yes, you want to address people's concerns and stuff like that. But I always want to say, that is the least of my concerns. Like, that's like the bottom. It's always people's first question, but when you really understand socialization, that like falls to the bottom of the list. Like, it is my least concern ever. Like, that was really good English there. And that's just, you know, my point of view from it and from understanding what it even means. And so there you go. If you have other thoughts about it, you can put them down in the comments below, or maybe even ways that you like to respond to people that ask that question, because I feel like that's always helpful just to know a nice way to respond to people when that question comes up. So put those down in the comments, because I'm sure other people would love help on this question as well. Okay, the second myth I have is that I can't do this. Like, I can't homeschool. I can't have my kids home with me all the time. Like, that is just too hard. And I just want to say, if I can do it, you can do it. Okay, I very much love my own personal time. I like thrive in an environment where I'm just left alone and can have quiet time to myself, which doesn't happen a whole lot when your kids are home and you have a lot of kids and they're home all the time. It's really hard to get that quiet environment. I would prefer my kids not to be home. I know that's not the case with everyone, but when we started our oldest in kindergarten, he was only in for like a month before we pulled him out. But when we started him in kindergarten, I was excited. I was not one of the moms crying or anything like that. I was like, yes, like, go away. And I don't really like kids, and I have 6 of them, so, you know, it totally makes sense. But I thought I would like kids more than I do now that I have them. That's a really, it's growing on me, but I feel like I'm not as good at I'm good at creating routines and organization and that kind of stuff. I'm not a playful, fun mom. And so I feel like that's kind of hard for me, where I'm just like, I don't really want to play with you. Just go do your own thing. And so homeschooling was not something that was on my radar as like, yes, I want to do that, because I love playing games and doing stuff with my kids all the time. And so if I can do it, I'm here doing it, and my personality, not wanting to do it, preferring my kids to be in public school, anybody can do it. Okay, anybody can homeschool, and you can make it work. And it's probably not as hard as you think it is, and you find ways to make it work. Even with my personality, I find ways to make it work where I still can have some time to myself, maybe not as much as I would like or think that I need, you know, but I use my time more effectively and efficiently because it's limited. And I try to do the best that I can with what time I have. So you can do it. The third myth is I'm not qualified. I feel like that's something that comes up a lot, that we just are like, I don't know enough. I don't know enough about all the topics, right? History, science, math, language arts, like all the things, I don't know enough about them to teach my kids. And one thing that I have noticed within myself in the almost like we're starting our 8th year of homeschooling in the fall, that I have noticed with me is it has ignited my passion for learning the more that I teach my kids. I always liked learning growing up. I wanted to do well in school and to be successful, but I feel like it was kind of lost for a little while. At least like my desire to read and to learn new things and to try new things was lost until we started to homeschool again. And then it was like, oh, I want to understand how this works or how to do this. And I want to read more books about human development because that's what I studied in school and it's exciting for me. And so it made me more excited to learn and to learn things that I like learning about. And something else that I think is helpful to know, like if there is a topic you just aren't as comfortable teaching, that there are so many resources nowadays. So online resources, ones that are just like books you can order with that you don't have to do a whole lot. The book or the online resource do the teaching for you, especially as kids get into older grades. I don't have a ton in the older, like my oldest will be going into 7th grade, but they have like math that has the math teachers teaching it online or whatever, like language arts, things that are fairly self-explanatory or that you can have someone teach them. You can, have a lot of resources so that it's not as scary and daunting as you think it is. And for me too, it helps. My spouse is also very into learning. We're both very good at math, and so that is helpful. And then he's also just amazing at language arts. So a lot of times when I'm really struggling with like writing or grammar or any of those things, even if I have an answer key, I don't necessarily know how to explain it well to my kids why it isn't the way they think it is or whatever. And so I'm like, go ask dad. So sometimes just having a few other family resources or friends maybe that if you do have bigger concerns that maybe they can be helpful in answering some of your kids' bigger questions. But there's just so many resources. And so even if you don't feel like you can teach something, the younger grades are pretty easy to teach. There's really not too much. Like if you can read and write and do simple math, then you'll probably be okay. It's just tricky once they get a little bit older, right? Things become harder and it's like you don't want to teach them the wrong thing. But there's just so many online resources. So just remember that. There's so many resources that you can pull from. The fourth myth is that I have no time for homeschooling. And I know that this is a big concern for a lot of people. I know some people work, have full-time jobs as a mom and the dad works, or they're a single parent. And that is tricky, and I don't understand how that all functions for those people. If you are one of those people and you do homeschool, comment and let us know how it works for you, because I'm sure that would be so very helpful for so many people. But there is so many ways to make things work around your schedule. And so don't give up on it. If you really want to do it and create a homeschool environment, there are ways to make it work, and it doesn't have to look like a public school setting. Actually, the point is that it doesn't. And that it looks how it works best for you. And it doesn't always mean you're doing constant book work and that you're doing math 4 or 5 days a week. Okay, it could be very different for whatever your life situation is. Again, like if people live on a ranch or a farm or something, that's gonna look a little different for them as they're out doing chores and taking care of animals and all that kind of stuff, versus people that aren't in that same situation and don't have all those responsibilities, but that is still homeschool. So depending on your life situation, you can make it work. It just might look a little different. And then I had some other comments, so I'm gonna glance down because I'm like, well, what were they? I think it's also important for us to remember that one of the purposes of this life is to teach one another and to help one another to learn and to grow. And I think if we keep that in mind, then it becomes a lot easier. And again, that doesn't have to be a cookie cutter situation. We can teach other people and we can teach our kids in a variety of situations. It doesn't have to be sit down classroom setting all the time. So that's another point I wanted to mention. And then something else that helps me, again, with my like a little bit OCD controlling personality, not a little bit, probably a lot of it, but is setting boundaries and having routines. Okay, so if you establish kind of ways that you want things to go, it doesn't have to be 8 o'clock we do this, 9 o'clock we do this sort of situation, but just a flow to the day, right? Some sort of flow to the day keeps it a little bit easier, and then you can cut out times when this is when mom is going to do work and it's quiet. Maybe if you still have littles, it's when they're napping or something like that. And you can use that time to get things done. And or if you need a different chunk of time, or if you don't have kids that nap but still need someone watching them and you maybe don't have older kids that could do that, You might have a nanny or an aide or some sort of helper. We personally don't have that. Sometimes I think that would be helpful. But if you are in a situation where you could do that, that could also be helpful and make it work for you, or they could help do homeschool with some of your kids while you do it with some of your other ones, or while you're able to get some work done or something like that if you are working from home. So there's options. That's the point. There's so many options. If you want to be able to homeschool, have your kids at home, even if you don't want your kids at home, but they're at home anyway, you're able to figure out ways to make it work. The fifth myth is that kids need to learn with kids that are their same age. Okay, I think, again, this comes back to the socialization and making friends. We get so much in this like one framed mindset that we can't see anything else. We're just so focused on this idea of kids have to have friends that are their same age, and they need to be in a classroom with kids that are their same age. And it's really hard for us to see anything different and to see how effective other things could be if we were willing to try them. And it, you know, if you think back, probably not even that long ago, I don't know, a certain amount of time. I'm not even gonna guess because I don't know. But kids used to learn together in one classroom. And you had older kids teaching younger kids. And it was just such a good learning environment. And especially if you have kids that are at varying levels, they can still learn and others can help them, or they might be able to work on something else until the teacher can help them. You know, it's a very collaborative effort when you have a variety of ages. It's complicated, okay? It can be complicated, but a public school classroom is complicated as well, because within those age groups, you still have kids that are at a variety of levels, but it's a little bit harder to be like, hey, you 12-year-old, come teach this 5-year-old this thing or something. You know, they're bored. Can you help them move on with their schoolwork? That's harder. You can't do that in a public school classroom. But we can do that at home, and that something like that brings me such great joy is seeing my older kids teaching my younger kids. And sometimes it's not even that much older. My 9-year-old was teaching my 7-year-old her math, or helping her. She is not reading very well yet. She's working on it, but she's not quite there. And so she is a grade level above in math, but a lot of the things she can't read, so she doesn't know exactly what she's supposed to do. And so he'll sit with her and help her go through and be like, oh yeah, he'll read it for her, and because I am helping someone else or busy in the kitchen or something. And so I don't even have to ask him. He just sits down and goes through it with her and just reads it, and she does her math. And it's so simple. I say it doesn't always work out perfectly, but sometimes it does. And sometimes it's nice too to have the older kids, when they're finished with their schoolwork, they can help watch my younger kids while I help someone else with their schoolwork. So again, we're all working together. It's a very collaborative effort. And I think it's so great for them to learn to work together with people that are different ages than them and that think differently than them, that are learning things differently than they are, because that's how real life is. Okay, rarely do we go into a job situation or a school situation or anything like that where there isn't a variety of ages going on. You know, you get into college and yes, there are a lot of kids that are your same age, but you also might have some that are way older than you or younger. Like I served a mission for my church. And so when I came back to school, I was like one of the older kids in my class because I had been out of school for like 2 years basically out of college, and then came back into college. So I'm in all these basic classes with a whole bunch of 18-year-olds and I'm 21. You know, so it felt at first a little awkward. I'm like, I am so old compared to everybody else. But then in our same classes, we'd have moms that had their kids out of the house or basically out of the house going back to school. You know, so they're probably in their 40s and 50s and they're coming back to school to learn and to get a degree. And so just again, a variety of ages. And that's how real life is. We're working with a variety of ages, and it's important for us to know how to interact in those ways. And so I think it's very important, and I also just think it's so rewarding. It's rewarding to see your kids step up, to see the things they can learn, and it also solidifies their learning when they get to teach their other siblings. All right, so those are 5 myths about homeschooling that I wanted to share with you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have other myths you've heard, I'd love to hear them down in the comments. Sometimes they just give me a chuckle, but And if you have other comments about just the ones that I have mentioned, anything, other insights that you have, remember to keep it nice and kind. But I know it's always helpful for other people to watch these videos and read comments to be able to see your insights as well. So put those down in the comments below. And remember to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.